on Blackboard. All right, so the first thing you want to do when you're laying out a poster is you want to have the poster background. You want what we call the canvas. So you're going to go to File, New, and you're going to want, at the very top, you'll see that the name is highlighted. So the first thing you want to do is put in the name. So of course it's SDA Poster. You can just call it Poster, whatever you want. So put in a name there, okay? Put in a title right off the bat because it's already highlighted and ready to go. So put in a name there. The next drop-down menu tells you the document type. So usually it's on the default Photoshop size. You want to go to US paper size. Then you're going to click on the size here. You want to click tabloid. You want to click tabloid size. Tabloid size. That's going to make it 11 by 17, which is what we want. Now, all of the rest of this do not touch. If you click on tabloid, this will automatically be set correctly. Everything here will be set correctly. So you're just going to say OK. So now you see that you have this canvas here. Okay, you have a canvas ready to go. So remember how pictures come into Photoshop, they dock at the top, right? And so it's really important when we do this that we undock them all. So I'm going to just click on the name and undock it. Okay? So I'm going to move that aside. Now I need to open the pictures that I'm going to put into the poster. So I can go File, Open, and I can open a whole bunch of them. So let's select all these. And I'm going to say Open. Okay, so it docked them all up here. And it does that all the way across. So you can see them all. It's docking them all the way across. But I want to undock them. So I'm just going to grab that name and undock them all. I want them all to be separate pictures in here. This is going to be really, really important when you go to lay out the poster. You need them all to be separate. So you're going to pull them all down. Now, this is kind of big and it's hard to kind of look at and work with. So the way that we resize the look of images in Photoshop is we do Control minus or Control plus. Control minus or Control plus. Control minus makes it smaller. Control plus makes it bigger. That's just changing the size of it, how it looks when you're viewing it. It doesn't change the actual size. And if you grab a corner on the window, you can make the whole thing smaller to match the size of your image. So I'm going to go through and make some of these a little bit smaller, so they're a little bit easier to deal with. Resize the windows so that I can have them fit that image. Resize them. Kind of come in. Some of them are too big. And it's not, remember, we're not changing the size at all. It's just the look of them. I want to be able to see all the pictures, and I can't because some of them are too big on the desktop. And remember, that's just the look of them, not the actual size. So I'm just resizing them to how they look, making them smaller, a little easier to deal with. All right. So now I have all my 10 images in there. So I'm going to come back to the poster here. I have the poster. I can make that a little bit bigger if I want. Okay. And I now need to move the pictures onto the poster. The way I do that is by clicking on any of the pictures and dragging it in with the Move tool. The very top tool, if you hover over it on the toolbar, says Move tool. So I just left mouse click that. Now I just click and drag that picture in. So I've dragged that picture into my poster right now. So there it is. Now it's way too big, right? Because I have to have 9 other pictures in here, and this one is way too huge. So in order to resize a picture in Photoshop, you use Control T for transform. Control T for transform. Control T for transform. You'll see now I have handles on the corners of this box. Similar, but also very different from a cropping guide. On the cropping guide, you can just grab a corner and you can crop it and change it, and it doesn't squish it or elongate it. But this one will. So if you grab any of these without doing what I tell you, you can squish out the picture and make it look terrible. So what you have to do to resize a picture, keeping the proportions correct, is you have to hold the Shift key down while grabbing a corner. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down and grab a corner and make that smaller. Then I let go of the Shift key and then I hit Enter or the check mark. Either one. That applies the transformation. So that picture is there now. Now you'll notice in my layers palette, I now have that layer above my background. I have the layer where that picture is. So let's get rid of that one and pull in another one. So I'm going to use the moving tool, click and drag that into the background, Control T for transform, Shift holding the corner down, and resize it. I'm going to resize it, keeping my finger on the Shift key. Now, it doesn't really matter what size you make them right now, just small enough to see them on your poster, because you can resize them all later. So I'm going to close out of that one. So let's move all of them in. Okay, what do I do to resize it? Control T for transform, hold the Shift key down, grab the corner, and I can resize it, and I can move it anywhere. So I'm going to do that with all of them. Hold the Control T, transform, hold the Shift key down to resize it. It doesn't matter, I'm just moving them so I can see them, and later on we're going to be able to lay it out how we want. Okay, so I'm moving that one in, Control T to resize it. Apply it. These little icons up here means either cancel or apply or commit to your transformation. And a lot of the tools in Photoshop have these two things at the top. So it allows you to cancel it, or you can apply it. So we're applying that, and we can move it because that one's selected. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag those all in. Control T for transform. Doesn't matter if it shows off the edge, it's still there. Make it a little bit smaller, a lot smaller. Put that one in, drag it in. Control T to make it smaller, hold the Shift key down. And click and drag that one in. Control T, hold the Shift key down, make it smaller. Okay. Now you'll notice that when I click and drag something that all of these lines come up. This is new in Photoshop CC, which is awesome because it allows you to line things up. It's sort of showing you where the lines are automatically. It's an awesome little tool to help you line things up evenly when you do that. Alright, so we have that in. I think we have a couple more, so let's get a couple more in there. Control T, hold the Shift key down. Oops, now you see this is what happens if you don't hold the Shift key down when you're dragging a corner, is you squish it or stretch it out the wrong way, and we don't want to do that. We never want any images squished or elongated. So we're going to make this the right size, pretty small, apply that. Okay, so now I have all of those pictures on there. Okay, so let's get rid of that one. So I have 9 pictures on there. Now you notice what happened in my layers palette is I have the background layer, which is white, there's nothing on it, and then I have 9 different layers here. And you'll see that in each layer it shows a little bit of, it's called a thumbnail, of where it's placed on that background. So that's how one way you can identify what layer you're on. So I have to be on a layer to be able to move anything. So let's say I want to move this picture of the butterfly. I have to identify where that butterfly is, and so I can come and click on a layer and then identify where that is. Now the reason that this butterfly is under this picture here, the reason the butterfly is under the orange flower picture is because that layer is below that layer. If I click on that layer and I move it above it, it's going to go on top of it. So if you move it above that layer, it's now going to be on top of that. Or so now it's on top of that because this is on top of all these layers, so when I move it around it's going to be on top. Or if I moved it to the very bottom, it's going to go under layers. Okay? It's going to go under layers. Whatever layers are above it, it will go under. So you can control that. Now, that's one way, is to look at where it is on the layers palette in this little thumbnail and try to figure out what picture it is. But it's much, 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 much easier to right click on an image. The top layer that comes up is that image. It's way faster and way quicker to right click on there. If I click on that layer, you'll see it automatically took me to that layer. And now, because I need to resize this, it's still too big. That's the quickest and easiest way. Right click on a layer you want to get to. The top layer is that layer. Control T or whatever you're going to do with it to transform, to move it, or even just to move it. Okay, so I can click on all of them. Now, if the only one that I can move is the layer I'm on. So right now I can only move this layer because that's the one selected. But then if I come over and right click this, I can now move this layer. And I can move it anywhere I want. Okay, on any of these. So I'm going to right click here and move this layer. And then I can right click here and move this layer. One of the things that you want to do when you're doing your layout is you want to make sure that you have even borders around the outside of your pictures, and that the borders between pictures are also even and match. Okay, because otherwise it's going to look weird and not balanced. And you want to vary the size of your pictures. You want to vary the size of them. Let's go back forward. So I'm going to grab this, move it down, grab this, move it here, maybe take this big one and move it up into the top, take the small one, move it down. We have to have room here. You have to remember when you're doing your layout, you have to have room for your paragraph and your title. And you want it to kind of flow. So if something is facing toward the right, you want to put it on the left side of your poster so it faces into your poster. So like this one here, this cactus here where it's kind of facing this direction, we want to move this one over here somewhere. Okay, so let's switch these out. Move this one back here, this one down here, because we want the direction things are going to bring us into the poster, not out of it. Okay? So let's say this is sort of how we want our layout. Again, you can vary the size of anything, because you can say, you know, I want, and ones you want to emphasize, you want to make larger. So like I think this is kind of cool, so I'll make that one a little larger. So now you have approximate layout here. Once you have your approximate layout, you want to put a background in. So you can put a color in, or you can put another picture in. Let me first show you how to put another picture in. So that's why I saved this picture, because it's kind of a pattern and kind of easy on the eyes, and it's vertical. It needs to be, you can do a horizontal poster if you want, but most of them are vertical. So I'm going to click and drag this poster in here. Okay? Now, boy, that's a small file. So you can see that that's in there, and it's in the middle, so it's going to be under some pictures and over other ones, because it's kind of in the middle of all these. I want to click that layer, and I want it to be right above my background layer, because I want it to, that layer is going to go behind all the pictures, so it needs to be right above the background layer. If I'm going to use a picture in my background, I want it to be right above the background layer in my layers palette. So now, how do I resize that picture to make it fill this frame? Control T for transform, hold the shift key down, grab a corner. Why is that acting weird? Control T, there we go. So I'm going to move it and make it a whole lot bigger to fill up that area. And then I'm going to apply it. Okay? And now once it's in there and I have it that a little bit bigger than the area, I can make it anywhere I want. Okay? So let's say I want it something like this. Okay? But one of the issues is I can't see my pictures because the background is competing for attention with those, right? They're fighting each other. So what we do here is we take our opacity down. Right here on the top of our layers palette, on the right hand side, I'm circling around it with the cursor, you see this opacity scale. That means I can make the layer more, it's opaque now, or I can make it more transparent. The less opacity I have, the more transparent it becomes, the more I can see through it. So I can click that layer and I can come and make it less. So I'm going to bring it down so it's not so obvious. That layer is still there, that you can still see the image, but now it's not fighting for attention with the rest of the pictures. Okay? So you take that opacity down about to where you say it's not fighting for attention anymore. Okay, so that you can see all your pictures in the background helps it instead of, let's go back down, instead of competes with it. Okay? So, that's to put a picture in there, and that can count as one of your 10 photos. So I'm going to delete that layer and show you now how to put color in it. If you look on your tool palette down here in the bottom, see my cursor circling around it? You see this, there's a black and white square. That's your foreground and background colors. The default is right where it is, black on top and white. That's the default. But there's this really cool tool called an eyedropper. It's the fifth tool down, or sixth tool down, fifth tool down, and it's called the eyedropper tool. That allows you to pick any color that's in your poster and match it. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to find a color that I think will look good with all these colors. Maybe a soft pink. There's a lot of pink in each picture. So maybe I can come in, and all I do is left mouse click somewhere where that color is. Now you see that my foreground color here, see my cursor curling around on the toolbar? Turned into that color pink. Right? Do you see it there? Turned into pink. So I can now have that color in the background. And the way I do that is I come about halfway down my tool palette, and all of these that have arrows on them on the tool palette mean there's other hidden icons behind it. So if the gradient tool is here, you have to click on it to get the paint bucket tool. It looks exactly like what it says, which is a paint bucket. So you click on the paint bucket tool and you'll see now your cursor turned into a paint bucket. So what you want to do is dump that color in the background. Again, you want to be on the background layer. Otherwise, it's going to cover up a picture. And I just left mouse click and it covers it with that color. Okay? So now, to undo a step in Photoshop, I can go back on my history palette. Wherever it is. I don't have it open. Don't. I do. Go back on my history window, which I don't see here. And I can go back a step, and I can get rid of what I just did by going back one step in my history window. Or I want you to learn these shortcuts. I can go Control Z to undo a step. Control Z. Okay, Control Z undoes one step in Photoshop. Control Z undoes one step in Photoshop. Control Alt Z undoes two or more steps in Photoshop. So if I do Control Alt Z several times, I can go back several steps. Control Alt Z to undo more than one. Control Z does just your last adjustment, whatever you did. But Control Alt Z, you can go back several steps. So I went back to this. I still have the pink in my foreground color here, but I don't want it to be that bright. So again, there's another opacity slider at the top. This tool has an opacity slider. So if you look at the top here in Photoshop, you'll see the opacity. Before I dump the paint bucket, I can change that opacity down, and let's say I'm going to change it to 50% or somewhere around there. When I come and dump it, the color is going to be much paler than what it was because I'm not at 100%. Okay? So if I go back to 100%, you can see the difference. So if I go down to 80% even, or somewhere around there, and dump it, you can see that it's paler than it was. So I can go anywhere where I think it's going to look pretty good in that color, and then use that as the color for the background. The color picker allows you to pick any color that's in your pictures. You want one that isn't going to fight for attention. Because, for example, if I pick the red, so I'm going to take this and pick this bright red, and I come and I dump that color back there. Whoops, let's get on 100% and show you. I dump that color back there, that's just hideous, right? All you can see is that color. You don't see anything else. So you don't want to use a color that's going to be the sort of stand out and take away from every picture on there, and that's what it's doing. You don't want to do that. So sometimes it takes some experimenting to get the right color. Okay? So that's to put a color in there. So let's put a better color. Let's go back. We'll just go back a couple steps and do that. Maybe we'll just leave that background in there, okay? So now we want to put the paragraph in there. So on the tool palette, you'll see the letter T, which stands for text. So if you click on that, you want to do the horizontal type tool, T, and you're just going to left mouse click and draw a text box. Then you can go into Word, your Word document. Hopefully you typed up your small, condensed version of your paper, and you can select, open recent. Just going to grab some words. I'm going to copy them. I can go back to Photoshop, to my poster, and I can draw the text box and paste that in there. Now, it went to that color because that's the foreground color that is chosen here. If I switch it back to the default, I can just click on the black and white little box that's smaller and it switches it out. But I need to change the color on this. I don't really want red on there. So let's change that. And I can come over again and get the color picker and pick any color I want. And let's say I'm going to make it orange. So now when I come in and do this, I can click on that orange box and say OK and apply it, and I'm going to have that color in there. I can change the font size just by highlighting it, just like Word. I can change any of the size here. I can change, whoops, I didn't know I didn't have it all selected. I can change the color. Go back because we have some of it screwed up, which looks really odd. Change back to that color. Say OK. Whoops. And I can change the type of font. So if I click down this arrow, the cool thing about Photoshop is that there's a whole bunch of fonts. And it shows you next to them what they look like. So you can come down and it has really a strong array of different fonts. And you can see and you can pick any of them and decide which one you want to use. And that's what it'll look like. And you can change the size again. So if I go in and I want to change the font size to a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, I just come in and change that. So let's say I'm done with that. Now I have to put a title in. I want the title to be bigger. So I'm going to use a little bit bigger font on this. So let's go here, and I want this back to the default. I want it to be black. So I'm going to say flowers at SDA. Okay, so now I can highlight that and do just like I do in Word. I can center it. I can click on one and put enter, and so I can center that so it kind of looks like that. Now that becomes something I can move. That little object becomes something I can move anywhere I want, and I can change it to how I want. We also need to include our names in here, so we're getting the names of the people in the group. So you add another box here, make it a little bit smaller than the words here. So I'm going to make it maybe 16 points, and I'm going to say by Fred Smith and Mary King. Okay, so let's highlight that and make it bigger because you can't read that at all. So obviously that's too small. So I'm going to make that a little bit bigger so we can at least see it, right? All right. So we apply that so we have the names of the people who made the poster. So this, when your poster is all done, you should have fairly even borders around. You should have a condensed version of your paper, a synopsis. You should have your title, and you should have your names on it.